You're listening to
and such a short amount of time to do it in.
a Mamamia podcast.
From Mamamia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, a podcast where people tell their stories very candidly and aren't afraid to be vulnerable. This episode's a little bit different. We haven't done one like it before, and here's something you need to know before we start. I've never watched Married at First Sight. This may seem like a bit of an odd statement, but for the interviews that you're about to hear, it's highly relevant. Because every year, for the past 7 years, it seems like the country splits in two, those who watch MAFS and those who don't. I have no judgment if you watch. I think we are well beyond judging people by the popular culture they enjoy. Please. But when you don't, you can feel a little bit like an alien because it's like everyone in the country is talking about scenes and characters from the show, and you don't know what they're talking about. And this year, two names have kept popping up, Domenica and Olivia.
That's gossip and
I just mentioned it like it didn't come with any malice or judgment or anything.
so sending that is not gossip or malice.
I'm sorry, but you put it out there.
Now, listening to that, either you'll have no idea who those women are, or else you'll be having some very big feelings right now. And I'm going to bet that they are big negative feelings towards one of those women in particular. Her name is Olivia Frazer, and she's my guest today.
I'm at the point now, it's like trying to get up off the floor. And I'm at rock bottom and I'm trying to get up. And every time I get somebody messages one of my loved ones something awful, it feels like I'm being kicked back down.
You're going to hear from Olivia in a moment, but first, some context. And for that, I'm bringing in the big guns. Jessie Stevens is an executive editor at Mamamia, and along with her twin sister Claire, Jessie has been co-writing MAFS recaps since the show started. Now, the reason that I wanted to interview Olivia on No Filter is not because I want the goss. This is not about picking a side or wading through the minutiae of what happened on the show. There are 5 million hot takes about that on the internet, so I think that's been well covered. No Filter is a podcast about vulnerability and being candid. And what I want to do today is to better understand the cost of being on a reality show when you get what reality stars refer to as the villain edit, and what feels like an entire country turns against you. But first, here's Jessie to answer my dumb questions about MAFS and why everyone's talking about slut-shaming, a dramatic dinner party, nude photos, bullying, and the fact that 130,000 people have signed a petition demanding that Olivia Frazer never be allowed to become a school teacher. So can you explain the premise of the show?
Look, most Australians will know this, but it is that you get two strangers and three experts match them and they meet at the wedding. Often they say awful things about each other, or sometimes
So it's like a blind date kind of thing?
Yeah, and in the US, I believe they legally got married, but in Australia, because of laws and complications and paperwork, it's not legally binding, which is probably for the best. So it's just a ceremony, which means that we're going to commit to each other for a period of time and see if we can make this work.
So do these experts intentionally put people together that aren't going to get on? Is that the whole shtick?
I would be, look, they've never admitted to that, but having watched and recapped this show for about 6 or 7 years, absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised, again, I'm speculating, if the experts aren't necessarily making all those matches, but in fact there are some very clever producers behind the scenes going, what we know about this personality type and that personality type is that there will be some clashes. Because that's why people watch. No one watches to see them fall in love.
So bringing us up to date with MAFS this year, I'm about to speak to Olivia, who I've never seen on television. I couldn't recognise, if you put two women in front of me, I couldn't tell you which one was Olivia. And yet I'm still somehow aware via osmosis of the fact that she's in this massive drama that feels like one of the biggest of the show's history and certainly a big one in reality TV. Can you just explain what happened and how we got here?
It began with Olivia early on in the season was a favourite. The audience had nothing negative to say about her, and she was given Jackson, and it wasn't a joke match. Like, it appeared to be a genuine, they quite liked each other. And so we learned that she'd spent most of her 20s caring for a sick father. We learned that she had some body image issues, and I felt quite empathetic towards her. And then what happened was Domenica, who was sort of a main character who was very outspoken with the group, Olivia came in and went, can't stand Domenica. She thinks she's the queen bee of this experiment and I'm going to tell her what I think. And she basically said, I can't stand your voice. I can't stand how loud you are, which resulted in Domenica smashing a wine glass at a girls' dinner.
Told my boyfriend. That's a No, do you know what? Do you know what?
And then that kind of escalated. And Olivia said, oh, she waved it in my face. And Domenica said, no, I didn't. And it involved everyone in the group. And then Jackson, Olivia's husband, said, I don't love this side of you. I don't love seeing you pick fights with people and be aggressive. And she said, this is just who I am. And it was almost this flip in the narrative. And it escalated from there. Basically, it got to the point where Olivia said, I wanted to do some research on who I was dealing with. And that's when the naked photos of Domenica were brought up, and Olivia had circulated them to almost everyone in the experiment. She says that they were freely available online. They'd been leaked from Domenica's OnlyFans. And Olivia's argument was, well, she took them. They're public. Anyone could have found them. I'm not apologising for that. And the argument of Domenica was, you all talked behind my back and you've got to admit that there's malicious intent when you do that to someone you don't like. And Olivia refused. And there are a few behaviours that Olivia exhibits, from facial expressions to comments to baiting people, that I think are genuinely quite triggering to people who have experienced bullying. That's not to say Olivia is a bully or she's a bad person, but if you've been bullied by other women in your life, then there are certain tactics that are really familiar and really upsetting. And I think that's played into why the entire nation has got behind some, real hatred for Olivia.
She's not the first villain on a reality show. There has to be one on every show in every season. Usually it's a woman. So how is there a petition? How is she getting death threats? Or is this just the standard thing that happens to reality villains? It feels like this is different. What's your take on it?
When my sister and I started recapping Married at First Sight 7 years ago, it was not the beast that it is today. I think the scale is getting greater and greater and greater. And what I'm seeing is, a few years ago, people would have gone, oh, that Olivia probably could have behaved a little better. And it would have been really hard. And there would have been a lot of criticism. But what I'm seeing now is just way too much for a single human being to handle. You've got someone starts a petition. It's like everyone's trying to outdo each other. So someone goes, Olivia's behaviour isn't great. And someone else goes, Olivia is an awful person. And someone else goes, I'm going to start a petition with 123,000 signatures, saying that she should be investigated by police. And someone else says, why don't we all email her employer?
Investigated by police for what? For being mean?
No, for the leaking of the images. I mean, I don't think that can possibly go anywhere. But it's gotten to...
So is the accusation that it's somehow revenge?
Yes.
I mean, usually it's a jilted lover who leaks nude photos of their ex, and it's called revenge porn, and there are laws against that. Are people trying to say that by doing this, she somehow broke a law?
Yes. But what I started to notice...
But 150,000 people cared enough to sign that petition.
Yes. And just imagine being the person at the bottom of that, like feeling that suffocated by how many people vocally hate you.
So, Jessie, just before I leave you and go and speak to Olivia, speaking of viral, you went viral this week for an opinion piece that you wrote. What was that about?
I pitched a piece and wrote it, but we always have a discussion among the editors, and they kind of went, not no one else wants to write this, but you're going to get hate. You're going to get a lot of crap if you write that opinion, which was, it's the opinion no one wants to read, the cost of being a villain on Married at First Sight. And some people have incorrectly said it's sort of a defense of Olivia. I don't think it has anything to do with that. What the piece attempted to do was put into perspective the level of vitriol we are throwing at a 27-year-old woman who is a human being made of flesh and blood, who I'm sure has heard the message, but at some point, enough is enough. And I basically said, if we're kidding ourselves, she's not reading it, everything you're writing, you're wrong. And I think a lot of us are delusional in thinking that this woman is okay and that she can handle it.
Now, before we hear from Olivia, I want to be clear. This is not about taking sides or endorsing or condemning anyone or anything. This is a conversation about what happens to a reality TV villain character when their humanity is stripped away. And you'll notice how I just called Olivia a character. That's what I want to understand, because the people who go on reality TV shows aren't characters, even though that's how they're portrayed to us by the producers and the marketers for reality shows who know that the bigger the drama, the bigger the ratings. Olivia is not the first reality TV star this has happened to. It's a story that sadly plays out away from the camera all over the world. In the UK, 2 stars of the reality show Love Island have taken their lives after their seasons aired. And that's what my guest on No Filter this week is in the middle of. She's looking around at her reputation, her future, her physical safety, her career, her mental health, and she's wondering, what happens now? Here's Olivia. First of all, I wanted to ask you, are you on contract right now, and are you restricted from saying certain things when I ask you questions about the show?
I am. So
okay. So are you allowed to tell me what's in that contract?
I have no idea. I haven't read it for a while. So I can't give away.
But are you allowed to tell me what you can't talk about?
I can't give away the ending yet because the show concludes on Monday.
Can you talk about what went on behind the scenes and your interactions with producers?
I guess so. I have already on radio and stuff.
Why did you go on the show? Tell me a bit about your life before Married at First Sight. How old are you?
I'm 28.
What was the Olivia story before this year?
So I was a drama student over in the UK. Lived in Stratford-upon-Avon, absolutely loved my life. Didn't like acting, so stopped doing that and started waiting tables and just had the time of my life over there.
What took you to the UK? Why did you go over there?
Oh, I got into this drama course like straight out of school.
Where did you grow up?
North of Oka on the Central Coast. So beautiful mum and dad. They loved each other so much. Little brother who was just the cheekiest little thing of all time. Very happy family. Definitely grew up in just the quintessential suburban beach lifestyle. Not that I love the beach that much, but yeah, just had a very, very happy childhood. I was a shocking teenager, but had a really privileged, gorgeous life.
And then you went and studied in the UK.
Went and studied
Didn't like
in the
acting.
UK. Didn't like acting, no.
Why didn't you like it?
I wasn't very good. So I always knew that I wanted to get married and have kids. And I know people are going to not be happy with me because it's not a feminist thing to say, but like getting married and having babies was always just my priority. Like I really had to think about it, and I was like, I'm not very good. Acting is such a competitive thing. I'm not very good. And I unfortunately, if you're not a very good actor, then it's really, really hard to have a life where you can get married and have kids and pay the bills. So, and I've never wanted to be a kept wife, or that was never on the cards. My mum always worked. It wasn't ever a factor. So default was English and drama teaching. So that way I get to do what I love, and it's conducive with having a family.
So how long did you stay in the UK and what brought you back home?
So I moved over when I was 18, and when I was 21, my dad was diagnosed with bowel cancer. So I packed up everything and came straight home. And my parents' financials, basically, my dad was meant to keep working. My mum was meant to retire or semi-retire. And so when dad got sick, the roles had to reverse for them. So mum had to move down to Sydney and continue working. I stayed home and looked after my dad. So he had bowel cancer and prostate cancer at the same time. And the bowel cancer was found because he was doing the screenings, and he was keeping up with like regular prostate exams, and people just didn't check results.
Oh, wow.
So by the time they found the prostate cancer, it was everywhere and terminal. And so he was sick for about 7 years, and he had a very long, painful death. Before I got off social media, I saw a lot of criticism from my mum online, because this part of my story, it does come up on the show, but it's not really explained as to why my mum didn't look after him.
Oh, my God.
So there's been a lot of criticism from my mum, like, why wouldn't she look after her husband? That's so selfish, da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, well, I wasn't working regularly. I had a couple of jobs here and there, and I worked in a lingerie store for a long time and loved it, but it wasn't enough to pay for me and my dad and the bills and things like that, and my mum if we were to reverse roles. So,
and also you don't have to explain, because your family at the worst time in your lives made an impossible decision in an impossible situation.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that I had that time with my dad.
So why did you decide, in the aftermath of all of this, why did you decide to go on not just any reality show, but like a shit show of a reality show in terms of how dramatic and how full on it is? Tell me about that.
So the lure was definitely Jules and Cam.
I don't know who they are.
So they were on season 6, and they just had the ultimate married at first sight love story. Like, they just loved each other from the first second and got engaged, and now they're married with a baby. So I don't know. I just had this like sixth sense that I had to do it. And I'd spoken to my dad about it and things like, and he was always I was like, I think I'm going to apply. I applied twice before I got onto this season. So for season 7, I kind of got to like the last stages of auditions. And then for season 8, I was signed on, but the match that they had for me dropped out. And then when season 9 happened, it was like after I lost dad. So it was, season 8 actually was after I lost dad. But, I just sort of felt like if it goes through, it goes through. If it, like, it was all very, I wasn't like gunning for it and feeling like this is it. It was just like, if it happens, it happens, and it'll be the direction that my life is meant to take. And I still believe that, like, even though it is hard, it's like, no, this is how I'm meant to meet the person I'm supposed to be with.
But wouldn't applying for The Bachelor have been a bit of a safer move in that respect, from what I understand of the two shows?
Absolutely. I wasn't a big fan of the concept of The Bachelor. Like, I don't like the idea of 20 girls fighting it out for one man. I find that to be really misogynistic and just, old school. And I don't like the idea of women competing with women. And same thing with like The Bachelorette. Like, I don't think it's a healthy thing to have a competition for somebody's love. I liked the concept of Married at First Sight being like very specifically designed for the individuals.
You believed that, or you believe that? Because, again, I haven't watched it, but from where I see it, I assumed that it was a reality show first and designed to get drama and, you know, you need a lot of content to make up 4 shows a week, and that they didn't actually try to match people who would be suited, because that's not very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a bit of a roll of the dice. I think that they do some decent couples. And even back then, I thought that they did do some decent couples, and then they did do couples for drama. And I just, you know, I sort of went into it like I could meet the love of my life doing this, or I could get stitched up. And if I do, I've just got to be a good sport about it.
When you started filming, did you feel comfortable all the time?
I felt comfortable until about halfway through filming. I knew, like, it was always very obvious that we were there to make a show. And Jack, my husband, we got along from day dot, so it was just, I felt very much comfortable and easygoing and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't until about halfway through when I started to feel unsafe that I was just like, there is something very not okay with this situation.
What made you feel unsafe?
So there was an incident at the couples retreat where it was violent and dangerous. And from my understanding, there is a duty of care from production to not subject anybody. We were all told at our briefing day that any sort of violence won't be tolerated. The boys were told that if they so much as clench their fists at each other, they will be removed from the show, no questions asked. So when that wasn't backed up after a particular violent thing, it was very much that person's removed or I leave.
Mm-hmm. So do you have like a producer that's assigned to you that's like your person, and you go to them and you say, here's how I'm feeling? And they say, here's what we want you to do.
Each couple gets their own producer who's like who they liaise with and all that sort of stuff. But then there's the big bosses. So it was the big bosses telling me like nothing's going to be done about this.
And do you think, looking back, that maybe there's a bit of good cop, bad cop in there? Like that your producer tries to win your trust and is like, hey, I'm just looking out for you. And then it's like, oh, there's nothing I can do because the big bosses won't let me. You know, do you think that, did you feel manipulated, or do you, looking back now, think that there was all of that going on?
Look, I just think, unfortunately for me, I'm really weak when it comes to authority. Like, I'm such a wuss. If I get called into like the principal's office or something, I'll burst into tears and have a panic attack. Like, I'm not very brave when it comes to authority figures. And so production knew this. So if it was like, all right, we need to talk Liv into staying, then we just have to have a conversation with her and sit her down and sort of
and tell her she's not allowed to go.
Or like belittle her feelings about the situation and say that it's no big deal and it's not on camera anyway. So we've had worse on the show. Everybody thinks that we have this every season, da 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 da. And I'm there like, I shouldn't have to be this scared in this environment.
So did you watch that not satirical show, but that show, I can't remember what it's called now, about The Bachelor, like in America, where it sort of showed the behind the scenes and how the producers worked and manipulated the contestants to get the most drama?
I saw clips of it. Yeah.
Did you feel going in that was a risk, or did you think I'll be able to handle this, I can control it?
I think I was very naive in that I just sort of thought I won't get myself into any trouble. Like, I'll be a good girl. And like I usually am. Like, I'm usually the teacher's pet. So I saw it and I was like, oh, that won't happen to me because I'm not like that. I'm not one to cause trouble. I just want to show up and hopefully meet a nice guy, otherwise have a couple of laughs and come home at the end of the day.
People talk about certain things that you said, and it's funny, I interviewed Abby Chatfield recently and she talked about frankenbiting, which is the art of taking things out of context or merging two different sentences together to make one sentence. Watching the show back, is that what you've experienced?
Yes and no. Like, there are some quite controversial things that I have said, and I do have to take accountability for that. I have a very sharp tongue and no filter. So that's definitely got me in trouble in a couple of instances here. I can see that there's a lot of frankenbiting in the show. Like, I know that, like, they've done things with Jackson's voice that he didn't say, and things like, even in the ads and stuff, I'm like, he didn't say that. That's his voice, but he definitely didn't say that. And there was one where I can't imagine, like, just talking about the a Googling situation, and it said that I Googled something, and I can't go too much into it, but
I want to ask you flat out, in terms of the photo situation, did someone provide those photos to you?
From production? No. So
did someone suggest that you go looking for them and bring it up?
No one ever did. I can't go too into it, but the general thing was I was drinking off camera with a couple of other cast members, and my girlfriends, this is just after the retreat, so my girlfriends back home looked up the other person, just like Googled her, and there was all this stuff all over social media platforms, including stuff, and they sent me all the social media platforms. So no one ever accessed OnlyFans or anything like that. Nothing was ever paid for and accessed like that. It was just all on social media to find, and very, very easy to find. And so they sent me this information while I was drinking off camera with a couple of other cast members. And the conversation that was had with the cast members was, I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to have that platform being OnlyFans. And then it was a conversation of, has this been left up on purpose? Because we meant to have a massive social media sweep. I know they did a very, very thorough job with mine.
So do you think those things were deliberately put out there to be discovered?
Well, that was the question. I don't know.
So I understand that contractually, you have to be careful of what you say. There's more to this story, isn't there, that you can't say?
There is. And it's like, on my part, I was like, the whole storyline makes me look like I'm out for revenge, and I'm a malicious person, and it's not. I'm just like, this information was dropped in my lap, and I had the dumb luck of being the cast member who was sent the information. And
sorry, go on.
Yeah, I didn't, like, everybody who was there in the room when I received this information has stuck up for me and said that it wasn't shared maliciously. Everybody, yeah, it wasn't. And I was just really naive to think that it wasn't, I just didn't think it was a big deal because it was so publicly accessible. I didn't think it was a secret. I didn't think that I was outing anybody. I just didn't think that we were supposed to have that platform. And I mentioned it to my producer, who didn't think it was a big deal either, and didn't think that I thought it was a big deal. So, and then I was just really blindsided by production, because they were putting words in my mouth and saying that I did it out of revenge, and that revenge word is such a massive trigger. Like, they've got my face on the ad for it with a big red revenge title above it. And it's like, when it comes to these matters, that's a really serious accusation. And was not what happened, was not the conversations I've ever had. Like, I'm being accused of slut shaming, which is definitely like I worked in a sex shop, like that lingerie shop that I worked in. I worked in there for 4 years. I've always been hugely supportive of women's sexuality. Anything, like, go for it. Like, I'll talk to you about kinks and hellfire and all that sort of stuff forever. And I'm being accused of slut shaming, and it's just not my beliefs at all. It's never been my beliefs. Anybody who knows me thinks it's ridiculous because it's just not. It's so like it's so hard to defend myself because the show has shot my credibility down. And it's such an attack when it's against what I've advocated for my whole adult life and my fundamental beliefs. And it's the same publications that are saying that I'm a slut shaming and all that sort of stuff who are also posting or printing, what's the word? I don't even know. Posting photos of me that I've taken in my underwear. So it's like, how can I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not looking down on or slut shaming anybody else because I've also done that sort of stuff myself. So I'm not a hypocrite. It's just the way that the show has made me look.
That must be infuriating and heartbreaking all at once.
And it was at the time, like when we were filming, and it was the last commitment ceremony. So that aired not Sunday, that just happened the Sunday before. And Jackson and I had just had this beautiful homestay down in Melbourne, meeting his friends and family. He flew in my mum. He got one of my best friends to come visit as well. It was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful time. The only hiccup was I got cranky because I didn't want to film in the gym. It's like, I don't want to do a workout on TV. Who wants to do that? Like, this sucks. So that was the only sort of hiccup we had because he didn't really get it. But anyway, and the way it looked on TV and the way it was shown was that our relationship was rocky and we were having a bad time and it was a disastrous homestay. And so we get on and then we come back and this whole photo thing's blown up and blows up at the dinner party, and I didn't know anything about it getting to producers and things like that. So when it comes out at the dinner party, I'm like, why are we talking about this? Like, this isn't like, why, like, I was like, it's there, like, it's not a secret, it's on the internet. Like, why are we talking about it like it's some salacious thing that's, anyway, I won't go into that. But so Jack and I get to the commitment ceremony, and the three experts are not only going for me and my character and saying that I'm revengeful and I did the whole photo thing for revenge, which is not the case. It's not the case at all. And that Jackson and I have holes in our relationship and we look miserable. And Olivia, here are all the reasons as to why you have no empathy, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, just shocked and appalled and feeling so not only threatened, but just like, this is completely out of my control. Like, I was saying, like, no, that's not how that happened. No. And I've had been nothing but honest. And just to have, like, they sort of would stop, listen to their earpiece, and then come back with another round. Like, they'd be like, oh, there's holes in your relationship. And Jack would be, because I couldn't talk it. Like, it got to a point where I could not speak. I was just like, you know, those awful, like, guttural sobs. And other cast members were sticking up for me because it was so hard to watch. And Jackson's like, there's no holes in our relationship. If that, like, tell us, like, give us advice, like, help us. If you think that we're in a crappy place in our relationship, help us fix it. And they'd listen to their earpiece and then come back to us with some other jab or, like, try some other angle. And it's just like, it was so, like, just such a clear manipulation, and I could tell, like, it was the first time filming that I could tell that they're just saying things so that they can edit it later. So that was really
and when
hard.
when you're in that situation, I imagine everything you say, everything feels like a trap. Like if you've got up and walked out, they could have said, you know, whatever they wanted to. They could have dressed anything that you said or did up to suit their narrative, right? The narrative of the show, which is whatever's going to get the biggest ratings and make the biggest drama, which this really, really has for them.
Absolutely. And like, yeah, like for example, Alessandra, one of the experts, had told me for 5 minutes straight all the reasons as to why I don't have empathy. And then so I'm like, okay, sure, I don't have empathy. Like you just did a very thorough job on explaining why I have no empathy in this situation. And so they cut it to I have no empathy, and people compare me to Ted Bundy, and I'm a psychopath and I'm a sociopath, and online magazines are bringing in psychologists who are trying to diagnose me, and as per Jesse's article, and they're trying to diagnose me with all sorts of like behavioral issues and things like that through a complex prism of reality TV.
Are there psychologists to help you?
So they have a lovely lady behind the scenes who is available to us even now, and she's really, really lovely. So there's her. She's employed by the show.
I was going to say she works for them, not for you.
Yes, she has always been nothing but kind and very supportive and given good advice to me. I have things are just popping into my head that I have no control of, but I have no intention of actually seeing it through. It's not fun, and it's not just the show. If it was just the show and we could all laugh and be like, yeah, that's not Liv's character, then it would be a different story, but it's public believing it, and it's like it's just the shock of like if you were to talk to any of these people, any of these trolls who are writing mean things online about me, or any of the journalists that are writing mean articles about me, you would be like, oh, Married at First Sight. Like that's so edited. Like you can't believe anything that happens on there. Like da-da-da-da. And any normal person would be like, yeah, of course. But then they still go and write all this awful stuff. So it's just like where does it switch from rational thinking into just rage behind a keyboard?
You've deactivated your social media profiles. I've heard you're getting death threats. What's it like to be in the eye of the storm? So people really understand. So every single person who might have thought of posting a comment or sending you a message, explain what it's like to be the human on the other end of that.
It's so just, I'm at the point now, it's like trying to get up off the floor, and I'm at rock bottom and I'm trying to get up, and every time I get somebody messages one of my loved ones something awful, it feels like I'm being kicked back down. Every time
people are finding your family.
Yeah, and my friends have had to deactivate Instagram and things like. My friends have gone to the police based on some of the stuff that they've been getting. I had a couple of death threats sent to my personal phone number, which I got, and I've had many on Facebook and things like that. So I got in the habit of just deleting it. So I deleted it, so I can't really go to the police about it now. Anyway, but I used to be a driving instructor, so many people had my private number, which I've had to now change because not just like kids that I used to teach, but parents texting me to call me a pig and I'm a delusional twat and all that sort of stuff. It's not just like I can stay offline. Like it was, and I think that was breaking point when I started getting texts to my phone because I'd removed myself from online. Like I wasn't on Instagram seeing the memes, and I wasn't on Instagram seeing the comments or Facebook seeing the comments, but getting things sent to my phone number was just such an invasion of privacy. Yeah, it was like that was really, really breaking point. And like from people that I know and saying that I'm disgusting and that they're mortified that they let me teach their kids to drive, and like former students going on TikTok and saying that I was a troublemaker and things like that. And it's like, that's not what? Like, that's so far from the truth, and just people looking for their 15 minutes of fame to like kick me while I'm down. Like even my brother's ex-boyfriend so as soon as he found out I was on Married at First Sight, sent me this real kiss-ass message, just like, hey, babe, congratulations. Like, we'll have to catch up, da-da-da-da-da. And then as soon as it started going south, he's making TikToks about how awful his relationship with my brother was. And, like, if you thought I was bad, like, my brother was worse. And it's like, leave. Like, you were willing to... You wanted to be back in the circle of things. You wanted to be back in my life when you thought things were going to go good. And now that they're bad, you're just going to jump on the pylon.
The reason I wanted to speak to you today was not to hear your side of the story, although I think the context is really, really important. But I think people just need to remember that there are humans. Like, it's a TV show, but there are people. These are humans.
Absolutely. No one deserves it. Like, I know that I'm not perfect. I don't think anyone who goes on any reality TV show is perfect.
But you're not Vladimir Putin.
I know.
And you're not Harvey Weinstein, and you're not Ted Bundy.
I know. It's I know that. My friends and family know that, thank God. They find it very...
Do you wish you'd never gone on the show?
I am very grateful for the show because it did give me Jackson and it did give me some good girlfriends. But I wish I had done a lot of things differently, and I wish I'd listened to my intuition and left when I no longer felt safe in that environment.
What would you say to anyone thinking of going on it in the future?
Do not do it. Run. If it's meant to be, it will. If you're meant to find the person that you love, you'll find them some other way. If it's meant to be, it'll be. If you want to go on there for fame, infamy, whatever other reasons people do it for, just know that there will be people on there who play the game better than you. And it's not worth it. It's absolutely not worth it.
How do you feel about the future?
I know I have a very, very bright future. I have a real wedding and babies, hopefully soon, to look forward to. I know that I will find myself in a fantastic career, whether or not that is teaching or not. Teaching is a very hard dream to let go of, but if I have to, I will be okay. I will find something else. And I have so much to live for, and I'm definitely in the eye of the storm, as you said, right now, but I know that I will get through it and have a very happy life, have a very happy, very private life, very far away from reality TV.
I wanted to ask you when the show came out, because obviously you said when you felt that things were going bad in the making of the show, when it started airing, when did you first get a sinking feeling in your stomach?
I knew it was going to be bad when it first started airing. I was made to look like the absolute sweetheart, and me and my husband just the gorgeous couple who does nothing wrong. And I felt sick about that because I felt like they were building me up and building my character up to tear me down. So even though I had this gorgeous like first edit and looked fantastic, I knew it was going to go bad, and I knew that this gorgeous first half of the edit was there to shatter my credibility. And it's a shame because I've always worn my imperfections on my sleeve, and I know that I'm not perfect, and I've always said that. And so when the tides first started to turn and people were like, oh, Olivia's showing her true colors, like, oh, the mask is slipping. It's like, no, I never wore a mask. It's just the way that they've made me look for the first bit to just be more shocking.
Right. So the good girl edit was unfair as well because it turned you into this perfect princess that you never pretended that you were.
Yep, which is genius. Like, I have to give it to them. Like, if it wasn't me, I would be absolutely astounded by it because it makes me look like I have some very severe issues, which I do, but as a result of it, not prior to it.
I hope this conversation has opened your eyes about what it's like to go on a reality TV show in 2022. You can read Jessie Stevens' article, The Opinion No One in Australia Wants to Read, Olivia and the Cost of Being This Season's Villain, through the link in our show notes. No Filter is produced by Gia Moylan. The executive producer is Eliza Ratliff.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Nobody speaks to me like Mamamia.